What's up, everybody? Glad you could make it back to the best of my recollection to hear about my time in the small rural town of Metabief, France, where I traveled to compete in the World Cross-Country Mountain Bike Championships. As we left off from my last story, I had dropped out of the U.S. National Championships in my home state of Michigan. This was a terrible blow to me, but I managed to do a little smooth talking and get my way onto the national team as the coach's pick. While we were all at the first airport where we sort of rendezvoused, I don't know where we were flying out of, maybe New York or whatever, that was the first time I actually started talking to Floyd Landis. And you know, I was trying to make friends with him. We seemed to get along pretty good, where like Jeff Osgathorpe, he was like, didn't say anything to anybody. And then like the three other cross-country juniors, they were just like these big, tall, jock type dudes that were just like not really talking to us too much. I was also kind of getting along pretty good with the downhiller guys. They seemed a little bit more laid back. And when we arrived in France, after a long bus ride out into the countryside, I'm not gonna lie, we were all kind of bummed out. It was like a farm town with like a 400-year-old stone hotel. The big time guys, Tomac, Ned Overend, as soon as they saw the accommodations, they split town, found lodging elsewhere. But the rest of us were just like hanging out in this really old, freezing ass cold hotel with a giant cafeteria where all they were serving was pots of bubbling melted cheese, fromage. So we had to kind of fend for ourselves, like nutritionally. Floyd Landis. We had some funny times there in France, wandering the streets of this tiny little village. Like went into this bakery and they have all the bread and everything, and then right next to the candy bars and stuff, there's like all these bombs in huge firecrackers like this big. I'll get the baguette in the little chocolates and the M80s, please. We walk out of there with a lot of firepower. We like take off into this farmer's field. It's like super muddy. Bury these half sticks of dynamite, light the fuse and like take off. It was comedy, total like farm boy shit. Even going on these like little 20-mile rides like down the valley and stuff. I mean, it just sucked. I mean, it was so cold. It was just wet. When I found out I got on the national team, I figured it was a good opportunity to get in on some free gear and some new sponsorships or whatever. So I got a hold of Specialized. They ended up giving me a helmet and some shoes, which I don't even think I ended up using. I also got a hold of Rock Shocks. Like, hey, you know what? I just made the national team. How about a pair of shocks? They send me this pair of shocks, I install them. They make my bike even heavier, but as you'll find out later in the story, this was not a good idea to begin with. From the moment we land, it's raining, and we knew that wasn't a good sign. After getting checked into the hotel and everything, we get our bikes, get on this bus, and we drive to the venue. And like pretty much all races, it's a ski mountain. Right away, we get into this mud, and it's just like totally caking, globbing up. This is really great that I have these Rock Shocks on there because I got a free pair of them because I'm a fucking hot shot or whatever. They clog with mud, they instantly add like 4 pounds to the front, and then everything is just clogged up. Cyclocross is a kind of racing that started in Europe. It's developed for basically being able to stay in shape for road racing in the winter months when it was always raining and stuff. You're running a lot with the bike, you're carrying it over obstacles. A lot of these European guys are already like super into cyclocross. Even on the practice lap, it was obvious what the outcome was gonna be. I mean, you see these like French and Italian kids that weigh like 120 pounds, like sprinting through the woods with their bikes, and there's like no mud on them because they're just running the whole time with them. Everybody's pretty dejected like right off the bat. We do this practice lap, we come back to the hotel, you know, have dinner and everything, this like boiling cheese and bread. At some point that night, Dale Hughes, the president of Norba, he pulled me aside and he's like, hey Mike, I gotta talk to you about something. There was some kind of misunderstanding. The US team was only expected to have 5 members, not 6. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. You know, they said you could race, but all you gotta do is do the qualifier. But what are you talking about, the qualifier? Qualifier, you know, my bike is gonna be like destroyed after a couple laps of this qualifier. Like I'm not even gonna be able to use it for the other race barely. All right, you know what, I'll just qualify. That's the spirit, that's what I wanna hear, you know, that's all you gotta do, just qualify, you'll be in there with everybody else. That's fucking bullshit, you know. To this very day, I'm not even sure how that whole thing happened. I don't know if it didn't matter. I put that out of my head. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna qualify. Of course, you know, it was raining all night. I do the qualifier. I don't even fucking qualify. All these little cyclocross kids just, they're like running like deer through the woods, you know, with their bikes. The only thing that made me feel good about the fact that I didn't qualify is the fact that all of the Americans got their asses kicked in the actual event the next day. You know, even Floyd Landis, I don't even know what place he got, like 30th place or whatever. It was just a disaster. It sucked. So I have a little stat sheet here that shows exactly how the US did. And we got like 5 medals, I think. And the really exciting thing was that Mike King won the gold medal in the downhill. And that was so awesome because he had kind of just come onto the scene, but he was already well known as a world champion BMX racer. And in the women's downhill, Missy Giove, I think she got bronze. It was just a real bummer, the fact that I didn't qualify. But in reality, even if I did qualify, the story of me racing in the world championships would probably not be any different than the story of me trying to qualify for the world championships. In this giant hotel we were staying at, the place where all the bicycles were stored was this underground cellar. And there was a guy to guard the cellar, and that was Tattoo Lou DeAngelis. And this guy was a pro downhill racer, and he was an ex-Marine, and he was like a demolitions expert, had all these tattoos and shit. So he slept in this freezing ass cold, like root cellar with like 100 bikes in there just to protect them. Now,
then a World Cup or a national event, even though it's still the same people we race against.
Clips of it. The first night we were in France, we went to the opening ceremonies, and it was kind of like the Olympic opening ceremonies. All the different anthems play, and there's torches and probably fireworks or whatever. Afterwards, everybody's hanging out, and I noticed riders from different countries are trading their rain jackets. And it's like, not like this one, we had like another one that was a heavier one. And I end up trading my jacket with this dude from South Africa. This white and green rain jacket, when it's kind of like way too big for me. When I fly back to Durango, my roommate in the dorm was this dude who was like way into rap music and stuff.
Dude, that fucking South Africa jacket's pretty dope, man. Why don't you let me buy it off you?
I don't know if you know that South Africa is different. Sure, all right, here you go. I sold him my South African national mountain bike team jacket. Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. It was a doomed experience right from the beginning. But I met a lot of really cool people, and it was a lot of fun hanging out in this like little small town. Kids were coming up to us and asking us for our autographs and stuff. One of the nights, the entire team, all of us walked down to this little town square where they were having a party, you know, passing around champagne bottles, and just, it was awesome. It was so fun. I do remember some really cool encounters with some iconic people, like Jackie Phelan, who's kind of considered like the godmother of mountain biking, and she was like very animated and hilarious to talk to. And just other people that, you know, I had grown up like reading about in the magazines and stuff, all these pro cross-country and downhiller people. The location for the race really was probably pretty good. It was just the fact that it was raining before we got there, and the entire time we were there, it was soupy, muddy. Really, the reason I'm doing this video is the fact that those years, the mid to late 90s, were considered the golden era for mountain bike racing. You have all these really influential people that kind of started the sport, that they were still racing. Ned Overend, John Tomac, Sarah Ballantyne, Lisa Muick, Greg Herbold was like a early downhiller. And there was big money in the scene sponsorship-wise. And some of the top riders were getting paid really good from outside of the industry. Tomac had a huge endorsement with Nike. Volvo had a team. There was tons of, you know, companies putting a lot of money into the sport. It was a really exciting time, and then, you know, I basically stopped racing in the late 90s, so I personally wasn't there for what happened, but from what I've read, a lot of the financial stuff kind of dried up. That's kind of the context for like what was happening. Anyway, thanks for listening to that story. I wish I could have a gold medal to show you, but I don't. Tune in next time. when I'll have another tall tale to tell you about bike riding or hunting or fishing or I don't know what.